I'd like to welcome Pete Lonton to Formula for Wealth. Afternoon, Pete.
Good afternoon. How are we all?
Good. And you? Nice
Yeah,
sunny island?
sunny Ireland. Yeah, it's a balmy 32 degrees and clear skies and everything's perfect. I don't really see what the problem is.
You're really good at visualization, aren't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what it's all about. In my mind it is, and then I open the curtains and it's a slightly different world. Let's just say.
Uh, um, Pete is joining us today. Pete's an investor and a business owner, and we're going to start chatting, Pete, about property because you are an investor.
I am indeed.
Can you tell us how you got into that?
Yeah, I actually worked out there not so long ago that I'm into property 20 years this year, which I'm only 40 and that makes me feel quite old. Um, so it was like, yeah, the realization I was working out, yeah, my first property was bought when I was 20 years old, and it was like a lot of people, I sort of fell backwards into it in that um, a friend of a friend's property came up for sale and someone said, well, it could be quite good and it could rent out. And I've actually been, that's the first property I have. I've owned that now 20 years. I think I've been in the property maybe three times. It's been the same tenant for all that time. Um, yeah, and it just snowballed really, from there. So that was in Northern Ireland, and then I went to university in Edinburgh, and I didn't buy anything there. I was a bit busy, having had three or four jobs through university. Um, and then, yeah, I was then working in around London for like 9 years. And it's there that I sort of quickly realized that the contract that I was on, that I was sent to this random place called Rochester in Kent. And the company very kindly sort of put me up in a guest house for the first couple of months, and they more or less said, then, right, you're on your own. And I quickly realized that actually, if I was going to be there any more than 6 months, that actually it made sense for me to buy my own property instead of rent. I sort of saw 6 months as the break-even point. Now, when you're project based, you don't know how long you're going to be there. Typically, I ended up being there as about 3 years, and I think I accumulated about 18 properties in that time. Um, so yeah, it was sort of interesting times. Let's just say, So between I got over there in about 2001, 2002, and then I went on a bit of a spending spree from there up until 2005, and I actually stopped investing in 2005 because the market conditions weren't favorable. At the time, I was frustrated. I really wanted to be buying more. I was working ridiculous hours in London as well as commuting, and I had four people working for me flat out. I would buy the smelly property. I had four guys working for me, making them not smelly and making them nice and pretty for my tenants. They were the days as well when you could self-certify on the mortgages, and you got sort of almost next day refinancing and things like that. So very different times. But then I did nothing in property from 2005 to 2017.
So you
So yeah.
basically started the same time as me.
Hmm.
And that was the era that I was doing the property. And one of the things I found was that initially, especially around about 2001 and 2002, you could make an offer on a property and you could negotiate and haggle. But after about 2, 3, basically you offered the asking price, and sometimes people were offering more than the asking price.
Hmm.
I assume it was the same in Kent. I was in Wales doing that, so I assume it was the same in Kent.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of haggling as such that I remember. I mean, I had no education. I just kind of went by what I sort of made sense. I mean, I just looked at the simple math and saying, well, what's the rent? What's the mortgage? How much do I need? And kind of went from there. Now I would say at the time, I mean, the market was very buoyant, especially 2003, 2004, and five. It was really sort of getting quite giddy. Um, I remember, I mean, there was, in saying that I did, I mean, I had a number of properties there that I would only get them on the third go round, and that was that, I'd offered the first time and I literally got laughed at. I can't remember the offer. I think was around, they were asking around 120 and I offered 115, and they sort of scoffed and said no. They had offers of 125 and 130, and why was I not bidding more? And then it fell through, and they came back and they said, what was I interested? And I said I was. And they said again they were asking 120, I think it was, and I said I'll offer 110. And they said no, you've missed the point here. We're going the other way. I go no, I'm offering less.
Yeah.
This was 6 months later, and they scoffed again and walked away and said no, that's not it. And then it fell through the third time, and they came back and they said it's back on, and we're asking 115 this time. I says okay, I'm offering 105. And they're going, you're going the wrong way. And I says, yeah, but in the meantime, I had actually bought one or two properties with the same agent. So they knew I was serious and knew I was capable. And they came back literally a couple of minutes later and said, deal, it's done. So I was going the other way when everyone else was bidding up that way, But that was the beauty when you buy property with your heart, it gets you in trouble, in my opinion. I was very much saying this is the rent, and if anything, I felt this property owed me something because it had used up my time and bidding and chasing and surveying and all the rest, And I got it, and I still have that property to this day, So
I just found it so fascinating because I'd come from New Zealand and I'd arrived in the UK, and negotiating on property, I'd see the price and I think, yeah, I can do lower than that, and I should be able to get it lower. And I'd put an offer in, and I think I'd gone really quite low, and people would accept first offer. And I think, oh, crap, I should have got charged. I should have gone in a bit lower than that.
sure.
I liked the negotiation because I felt then I got a deal. And when I went in and someone accepted the offer straight away, then I felt, well, I haven't had the chance to do the deal. But the second, once the market changed and we went from a buyer's market to a seller's market, that was just unreal, the acceleration that happened with the properties at that time.
I mean, I had a strange instance, and I must look up when I bought it, but it was around 2004. And there was one I was buying, and it was a number 13 Clive Road. And we bought it, but for some reason the legals took quite some time. And I can't remember, it was a probate or there was something, and I can't remember the reason why. But literally, the legals, I think, took about 12, it was just shy of 12 months. I remember that. It was just a long period of time. At the time we worked out, I think properties were going up on average like £400 or £500 a day at the time.
That's phenomenal, wasn't it?
It was just crazy. And I bought the property. We eventually went through and I refinanced it about 3 weeks after. And I pulled out my deposit, the refurbishment money, and a bit left over. And that literally was after about 3 weeks after owning the property. And it was just, they were crazy times,
My husband was the same because we put an offer in on a property. We had a really good broker, and he put two loans together at the same time for us because he knew we were buying, and the same as you, we were buying the worst street in the house. Sorry, the worst house in the street.
Yep.
And he was turning the properties around in 2 to 3 weeks, and the second mortgage was there ready to go, so that we again were releasing the money the same as you. The property market has gone a bit weird, but obviously with what's going on now, opportunities going to come up in the next 12 months or 18 months, you think, again?
Listen, I mean, I have a very simple strategy, and the way I personally buy property, and everyone's different. I think it's amazing, even in the short time the sort of COVID-19 has kicked off. I mean, I would say the trees had a good shake. I'm startled as to how many have fallen out of the tree on the first shake.
mm,
And like a lot of businesses, you kind of go, were you in business? I mean, literally, we're a couple of weeks in, and people are going to the wall. They're closing their doors, and that's not closing the doors just temporarily. That's a full, we're
yeah,
gone.
yeah,
The fear and everything else, and property is the same. And I was reading reports there this morning and saying, I mean, they're speculative, but they're saying the market's down, 10, 15% already.
yeah.
Um, I'm personally looking. I think we're going to certainly here locally. I think we're going to hit probably 25%. Um, Now, Northern Ireland and where my key area at the moment is Northern Ireland, just because of a number of market factors. I mean, ironically, I sort of south of England and Belfast, sort of geographically they're really close, not. Um, but you know what I've been doing for the last probably sort of 36 months is doing it for cash flow. I'm on a buy and die strategy. Um, it's very much asset building. Like, sorry, I mean the cash flow side is fine. It's self perpetuating, but like I say, I'm really not interested in the value. I just want to know what's the rent and what's the mortgage payment. Um, but again, I do have service accommodation, and I have predominantly I'm buy to lets. But similar to yourself, Karen, isn't it? You're a lot of buy
Buy
to
to
lets as
let,
well.
buy to
Yeah.
let, yeah. And I don't do HMOs or anything like that. It's family homes.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think in the in the property education world, buy to let is almost like the bottom of the tree. It's
Mm,
kind of the most plain and boring of the strategies. And I would almost sort of but like a naughty child. It was like I'm going, I'm sorry, I've only buy to let. I'm sorry, it's it's not very exciting. It's like I'd love to say something more exciting, but times like this, I must say I'm more than happy with the choice. And yeah, it's a bit like the strategy I had back, pre the sort of crash, the 2007 2008 crash it was just the mathematics. It was like Monopoly. I mean,
yeah,
Monopoly. I love Monopoly, by the way.
yeah,
But it's just kind of going, just collect the rent and do this, and then you have a few pounds left over. It's as simple as that.
yeah.
And listen, if the market inflation sort of degrades the mortgage anyway. Now I'm predominantly interest only on my mortgage, and I choose as and when to overpay on the capital. I'm still predominantly reinvestment, but you know, but my debt level, ironically, in England's the most I can get it up to. I wouldn't buy my own properties back now, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because the capital value has increased so significantly, but the rent hasn't followed suit. So,
It has been a pretty depressed market for,
mm,
well, basically since about 2005,
yeah,
2006. It's been really stagnant on the rents.
yeah, and I mean, when I started going on a buying spree in there, like I say, I was about 24 to 36 months ago. I was flying all around the UK and looking at properties here, there, and everywhere. A lot in Wales, actually.
Mm,
It was sort of on paper they look great, and I'm sure there is some core areas. The problem is it's not my gold mine areas. I don't fully know them, so I'm reliant on other people telling me. But after a while, I was sort of scratching my head and going, listen, I'm leaving the house at silly o'clock in the morning. I'm jumping in the car. I'm going up to the airport, parking the car, jumping on a plane, going over here, landing in this city, hiring a car, going off and looking at this property here. And you kind of go, this is nuts. Surely there's something else on my doorstep. And that's when, talking to a number of people said, right, what do I need here? What's my formula? And 10% gross yield is something that's always sort of rang the bell for me.
mm,
And very simply the way I look at it, the 10%, well, commercially, the bank is going to take probably 4 to 5%, certainly on limited company terms. You've another sort of 1 to 2% in terms of letting agents, and fees and insurance and all the rest. So you're sitting there, costs and overheads, and what I call my oh crap fund, which is when the phone call comes and says, "Oh, the boiler's fallen off the wall, or the doors, something's happened to the door, or magically some damage got caused, but nobody's fault." You kind of go, "Oh crap, okay." Well, I've always had a fund set aside for that. Now it's either that fund can be a credit card sitting in a filing cabinet with capacity on it,
Yeah.
or it can be actual physical money. But investors almost, I'm always surprised, people going, I didn't expect that to happen, and it's like, okay, I'm from the building, I'm a building engineer by trade, so it's like pretty much everything in your house at some point in its life cycle is going to need replaced. The roof is going to come off someday, windows are going to change someday, and it's like there's this naivety that actually things last forever, and you're like, no, I'm pretty sure it's going to quit. So treat it as an asset class, treat it as a depreciating item, and do it that way, and incrementally save, which I know obviously is something the £2.73 club is about as well, is be mature in the fact of putting money aside, and investing in the property. I have a mantra, and we're setting up another sort of property investment fund where we're saying it's all about happy, healthy, ethical homes. I want to have, ironically, the most efficient and ethical houses on the street. And people still say, well, that won't pay. And it's like, well, if my tenants never leave and they have the lowest bills and the highest quality of living, it's like that is a win-win-win. To pay a couple of £100 extra for triple glazing instead of double glazing. To put in a more efficient gas boiler, or put a couple of solar panels on the roof. I mean, it looks like a lot of money at the time, but it's very much it's a short-term view. I mean, like I say, when I have tenants for, like I said, my average tenancy at the moment is sitting around 5 years. In terms of how long my tenants stay. I know a lot of people factor in, sort of 8% voids on their, their rents annually and things like that, which is essentially a month a year they're assuming they're going to lose because of a change in tenant. But
like you, I tend to find that once you've got the right tenant in there, they tend to stay there.
Yep.
I've had tenants that have been there probably 15, 16 years because that was the property they wanted, that was where they wanted to be. But a thing I found interesting, you commenting then reminded me of when it snows. I remember heavy snow, phone call off a tenant saying the radiator's fallen off the wall. So you have to come out now and fix the radiator. And I'm to dig out of the car to get the van out to go and have a look. And then get down there and say to them, well, how long has this actually been off the wall for? Oh, probably about 2 months, but I didn't think it was important.
Yeah.
But as soon as it snows, you have to go and fix this radiator.
Yeah, it was the first two.
Lovely at times.
The first 2 years when I was based down in Rochester in Kent, the first 2 years I managed all my own stuff. And listen, I tell you now, I mean, I was as green as they come, and I was like, I still laugh. I mean, even when I moved to Edinburgh from sort of little old Northern Ireland in a sort of fairly small town, and I was there, and I was like, I would be walking up the street saying hello to people, and they were just looking at me going, you can't do that. What are you doing? Are you strange or weird or what? So anyway, in Rochester, then I managed my own properties for the first 2 years, and I worked relatively nearby, so it wasn't the end of the world. But I got more and more, you just stand as you do. It's like, well, I'm not spending that money as a letting agent and all the rest, and that was fine. And and my ego was massive because I was going around quite often collecting the rent in cash, So no, it didn't take much to realize that actually, if you were collecting, 5, 6, 7, 800 quid in cash off multiple properties, and it'd be 5, 6, 7 properties there, and you were sitting there, and your pockets are full of stinking cash, and you're thinking, oh, this is fantastic. Until the third year came, and I was getting busier with work and everything was going on, and then basically I had a number of tenants. One lost their job, and things were going on, and the problem then came is I wasn't on top of the paperwork. So what was happening then was that actually, the problem is I wasn't issuing notices and I wasn't finding out what was going on. And so eventually I went round and there was 3 tenants. I ended up sitting and talking to them and saying, what's going on? They're saying, listen, I'm sorry, through sickness and one thing or another, I can't afford to pay the rent. So we're sitting having a cup of tea, and they're offering me a biscuit and all the rest. It's lovely. And so we've actually been to the council and they said you have to evict us. Okay, so then eviction takes 3 months. And then you go through and they're going, well, actually, it's not enough to evict. It actually, you have to go through and you have to then enforce it. So that's another couple of months. And they basically have to have it that the bailiffs are more or less kicking the door down before the council will step in. And the council is very willingly and openly saying, until you are being, forcibly removed from the property, only then will we rehouse you, you know. So the money I lost in that third year and the heartache and the hassle and all the rest and, phone calls late at night and me having to make phone calls and all, I could have paid for the letting agent for probably about 10 years. Literally, and I'm talking tens of thousands I lost that year. And that was even before I had a letting agent go bad on me, But that's another story. But it's this naivety of, I'll do it myself. And now I'm like, I treat my letting agents, as well as I possibly can. Their expenses are tax deductible. They're from the area. They understand that they're on top of the paperwork. They do all this. They keep my tenants happy. All's great.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's sometimes in like investing and stuff like that, it's education and knowledge, and it's weird why people sort of believe they can either do it themselves or don't know what's going on. So it's just one of those things.
Moving on, we've got a bit to cover today, haven't we?
Sure.
You've set up a property networking business or networking group, I should say, in Belfast.
Yes, correct. Yeah, sure. So we are, it's part of a franchise. So it's the Progressive Property Network so we've set it up for Northern Ireland. So we call it PPN Belfast NI or Belfast simply because Belfast being the capital city. Simple reason being is, I know for really sort of in-depth education, I really wanted to go to somewhere, and I noticed that I was having to go to England for my sort of in-depth education. And I thought after a while, again, I'm jumping on a plane and I'm going over here just to get, to speak to like-minded individuals and get in depth. And I said, why not? Why not bring it to here? So I did that. So we literally started there in September last year, I think it was. And it's been great. To have a small network of people that you can sort of speak to and sort of share knowledge and things like that has been absolutely vital. And it's something I've really enjoyed, and it's amazing, the opportunities you get when you are the person at the front of the room as well, so ironically,
I found the networking was really important, and going to groups like that, it kept you up to date with all the changes.
Yeah.
And that's key because there are just so many changes in the industry, and each area seems to have its own rules. I know Ireland's got its rules, Ireland's got its rules, Scotland's got rules, Wales are totally different as well, and it is quite a minefield trying to keep up with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's keeping up, but we all generally can only focus and be a specialist on one thing, and it's like, if I want to do some legal paperwork, I get a solicitor. I don't sort of go, that's not my nature and go, well, I'll give it a whirl anyway and see how far I get. You just don't mess about. Well, I treat the same thing with, whether it be finance, whether it be local knowledge, whether it be even estate agents and things like that. There's a lot of the trades get a hard time, and actually, for me, it just pays absolute dividends. But as well, I mean, I sort of found, I've always found property investing can be quite a lonely business. And it's really sort of bizarre. I mean, you get plenty of people with opinions, don't get me wrong. But the problem is their opinions and they've never done it. And I have a very simple rule is like, until you've tried something once, I don't think you have a right to an opinion. And that's, for me, it's very simple for that way. And I said, right, well, trying to not be lonely and actually having, I mean, I haven't spoken about it publicly, but I mean, there was a situation last year which I very nearly invested in a relatively large deal that would have caused me a lot of damage. And I sort of, because of the speed of the deal and what had to be done and the complexity of it, I lent on sort of those around me in terms of my network and my sort of power team and sort of people around. And it was nice that they came in with a clear vision and said, listen, you're absolutely nuts. This is not what you think it is. But my head had been so deep in the timing and the speed and the complexities and all the rest that I actually didn't see the wood for the trees. And thank God I had people around me. And there was one meeting in particular where everyone was just looking at me going, are you blind? Are you crazy? This is not what you think. So, networks can, like I say, it sort of, it stops you from getting lonely. It stops, it sort of helps you to have a second opinion. Um, Listen, a little bit of an advice, a tweak. Here's something I found. Here's something that happened before. Here's someone you need to speak to. You know, I mean, the coffee desk is probably the most valuable desk because that's when the contacts happen. And ironically, people still treat them like, it's like, oh God, one of these meetings as well. But if you've got good quality people in the room and you've got people there for the right intentions, then it's massive value, massive.
So how often do you meet?
So we meet there. So it's typically the third Thursday of every month. So we take on the sort of the local national stadium, and it's a great venue. And like I say, it's there. It's generally we sort of about sort of 2.5 hours of professional speakers. I say sort of professionals in speaking. Even random things. It sounds silly, but I mean, last month we had one guy talking about damp, and I've never known so many people to be so enthralled by damp.
Yeah.
As an engineer, it does something for me. I understand it, and there's so many things, but massively informative. And then the second one was about Instagram and branding and sort of working it out for your business and just, I mean, bizarrely, two massively popular speakers, and it sounds saying, well, what's Instagram got to do with property? But then it's about image, it's about putting yourself out there, it's about potentially attracting investors. It's 50 things, and actually a lot of it can be automated, and it's a different world of investing now.
And you talk about investing, but it is actually a business.
Absolutely.
For me, every investment I've done, I've always treated as a business.
Mm. Mm.
And if you haven't got the money, if you haven't put the whole dynamics of the business together, like you've talked about your criteria for determining a property, but not just in property, but in any investment you do, it is a business.
Yeah. And every pound that goes into that property for me, it's kind of like it's like a debt record and going, you owe me £1. That property owes me £1.
Yeah.
It's like just before we sort of wipe the slate clean, I want my £1 back, and then I want my dues on top. And when you've sweated your asset, because otherwise you get very blasé, and the mind's a very funny thing. We get busy at something else, and then you sort of forget how much money or time that asset has cost. And it's kind of, oh well, don't worry, it'll all work out in the end and all the rest. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not. I don't monitor to the smallest nth degree. I have to be very relaxed about it because I know for me, I've had depression twice in my life, so I put in big buffers. So when my sort of oh crap phone call comes, it's like going, that's fine, we've planned for this. It's okay, no need for stress. And the letting agent knows under 300 quid, don't even phone me. Send me an email, just keep the records. But under 300 quid, you have authority to spend. And people go, well, it never gets out of hand because we don't let it. But at the same time, by giving the letting agents authority, they love my properties because they don't have to make 15 phone calls before they can fix a tap, or do something which is just, because the tenant's giving them a hard time and they're having to give me a hard time or explain themselves and get 3 quotes and all this carry on. So by doing that, then that helps with, I treat it like an asset, saying, well, listen, it's important that my tenants are happy and my letting agent is happy. But people they take it personally. Well, that tenant's, God, they're always doing stuff wrong, or this is happening, or that's happening, or, they're charging me far too much. You're like going, no, they're managing, the average value of my stuff in England is probably around 200,000. And you're saying they're managing my £200,000 asset. Now, don't get me wrong, I have loans and debts on that, but you're kind of going, yeah, but that's like the nicest car I can think of times two, is being managed by someone, and I'm great at how the garage is looking after it. And you're kind of going, no, seriously, that they're looking after a very valuable asset, so treat them with respect.
Yeah.
People don't get that.
I know estate agents, one of the things I found is you had to build a relationship with estate agents, and I got deals before they even went into the market. And every Christmas I would round there with tubs of chocolates and bottles of wine, and I don't think anybody had done that for some of the agents I went into, because they just looked at me a bit blank the first time I went in. After about 2 or 3 years, it was they actually thought, oh yeah, have this giveaway when I came in the third time. But yeah, you got to appreciate them for the work that they do. And I can never let my property portfolio if I haven't had the relationship with the agents.
I mean, it's almost disarmingly easy to do stuff like that. And it's like going, yeah, it's go in for a coffee, go in for a chat. And I've done it. I mean, there's times when I've not done it recently. I know there's a couple of agents at the moment where I'm well overdue going to see them. And even, like I say, I don't have to be on the hunt for that, but they phone in and, and there's the number there, because I've young kids, and you sort of bring the kids in, and the kids, one, you just hope they don't wreck the place. But, we're all human. We love to sort of interact, and they say, oh, God, you're bringing the kids in and lovely to see them and all the rest, and incredibly generous. And we're all people, but, people do business with people too, and as you say, that's absolutely key.
So I want to move on to your new business.
Yes.
Fire in the Belly.
Fire in the Belly, indeed.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
So yeah, bizarrely, Fire in the Belly came about. Like I say, there was a lot going on in my life, and I had a renewable energy business in Northern Ireland. I was involved now. I was, there was a lot going on, and I sort of was involved there from 2010 more or less through to 2017. And there was a local scandal basically where the government laid out an incentive, and it was too good an incentive. Essentially, that's, I think, the summary. So it basically inflated the industry and then collapsed it. So the government basically pulled the plug, realized what they did, and broke 20-year promises and all this. So I very quickly, sort of after a time, found myself there with sort of no business, very low in terms of my mental state and things like that. And we'd actually just had two twin girls, and I was pushing the pram up the road one day, as it was, and I don't know why the thought process sort of came to me and said, well, why is it that one person jumps up off the couch and goes and switches on the TV, and the next person jumps up off the couch and then trains to become Olympic athlete? What's the difference? Why is it some people sort of want to sort of take over the world and other people just want to take over the living room? Do you know what I mean? I was trying to, and my thought process for some reason just in that particular time was going through this, saying, what's this sort of gut instinct and fire in the belly? And I was reading a lot, and I was consuming a lot. I don't read, I listen, because I'm dyslexic and ADHD. So I was consuming a lot at that time as well in terms of information, because I just knew there was something more for me, and this sort of itch and kind of going, can't put my finger on it. And that's Fire in the Belly came from that. So it literally was fire in the belly. I said, what's fire in the belly? And I personally believe everyone's born with fire in the belly, but everyone's different. Some people have different beliefs. Some people believe it comes from a different life. That's a different conversation. Whether you are in the depths of despair or you're on the highest of the high, I believe everyone has a fire. It's a neutral energy within you, and what you choose to do with it is your choice. So that's, the two things. One is the amount of energy that you have, and two, what you choose to do. So that's where Fire in the Belly sort of just kept, it's one of those ideas that just wouldn't go away. I then got a I sort of thought, right, it'd be good to actually get like put it into a wee book. So we got a book, and then I thought, right, I'm going to make it a kid's book, something simple to begin with. And then I was like, well, funny enough, I'm dyslexic, so let's go and get a book coach. So got a book coach, and yeah, she was fantastic, and we sort of a couple of workshops, and I'm a big doodler. And long story short, I ended up, we would record all the conversations, and then I would get the conversations transcribed. So saying that's super easy. So I love to talk. I don't really like writing or reading, because they're low on my IQ levels. My IQ is above average, but it's because I'm high on the visualization creativity, but I'm low on reading and writing. It's not that I can't do it. It's just it's something I will never do for leisure or pleasure. So I then started sort of thinking, right, well, I don't know enough yet to be able to write this myself. So I'll start just talking to people, go, fire in the belly. What does that mean? What do you think it means? And all the rest. And I still have my original question set. So, sort of family and all the rest, and it ended up, we'd be in like 2 and 3 hour conversations about fire in the belly. I thought, right, okay. So my idea was then, right, I'll chop out all the fluff, and then we'll basically get the nuggets from each conversation and start pulling it into a book. But the problem is, as the conversation got more and more in depth, you eventually go, this is too good. It's doing an injustice to basically chop it all up, dump all the not so good stuff on the floor, and then just use the good stuff. And the problem is you had no context. You didn't know why somebody, because it sounds very profound when you hear the story, but if you just hear the actual end result, you kind of go, yeah, whatever. You don't realize that what someone's gone through to get that. And then I don't know how to this day, I ended up in a podcast course. It was with the guys I do the property training with, and it was in the same building. And I don't know whether I was in the wrong room or what. All I know is within 10 minutes of this 2-day course, I knew like, this is happening. And that's literally, so that was in around July last year. Like I say, we've been recording and, finding my feet and doing all that. Like I say, we launched probably about a month ago now. We've done about, now probably done about 50 recordings. I would say probably about 35 to 38 of them will go live. There's a number won't, and that's because it can be quite emotional when it's a life story. So when people look back over time, there's sometimes the stuff they've not quite cleared up for themselves, or they've not quite sort of worked out. So yeah, so fire in the belly. The most common answer when I ask people what fire in the belly is passion. It's that's what it is for people.
And the type of people you interview for that?
I call it successful people. But success can mean anything. It can mean financial success. It could be the fact that you're alive today. It could be success in achievements that you've done. And I actually believe, and the more I get into this, is, I be honest and say there's a couple of interviews I've done, and I've sort of gone in and shame on me, but I've gone in with a low energy and going, right, well, I'm not sure what's going to come out of this, but listen, you got to be in it to win it type thing, And I've come away blown away, and I've actually said to the people, going, shame on me, because I didn't foresee the actual the journey that you've been on and what's happened. And so now I like anything you say, is just, if the best thing I can know is that I don't know. Someone saying, well, what do you think of that person? It's like, I don't know. I'll go find out. I'll ask the question. And I do love fire in the belly, because what floats my boat might do nothing for you. But there's neither right nor wrong answer. The way you've done something, you're going, well, I wouldn't do that. But it's like, yeah, but it's not me. That's your journey, not mine. And so that's the beauty of it. You get to speak to people, and you get to sort of ask that. And
have any of them, I know some of the people that you've interviewed, they're very inspiring people. Has any interview you've done actually inspired you to go and do something differently?
I would actually say every one of them, genuinely. The process is quite interesting. I actually find it quite trancy. It sounds strange because they're quite long in general. They're sort of an hour and a half to, on average, probably an hour and a half. But because it's a question format, you can't help but visualize it in your own head. So, if I said to you, what is, and we were talking about this earlier, is what is respect? And you can't help but run a dialogue in your own head. And then you sort of you cross check it with their answer, and you're kind of going, okay, I've got to remember that that's their answer is their answer, but I can't help, because I get some people going, well, I don't imagine it, I can't visualize. And you're going, can you think of a red car? It's like, yeah, of course I can. Okay, so you can visualize. It's like we all visualize. So I find I gain a lot from it. So it's a bit like they say, a lot of people who counsel need counseled. Mentors need mentors and things like that. It's almost like this never ending, but I do feel it's like an onion, and I describe it as I've had 37 and a half years of more or less when I left university and school. I mean, you could burn the building down. I was done. I staggered back in to start a master's and then realized that actually, no, I really didn't want to go back. But it was only, like I say, about 3 years ago where I said, actually, do you know what? I now realize that I would be learning. I literally will be being lowered into the ground and I'll still be learning, and it's just going to the end day. And now, instead of almost, again, because of the dyslexia and things like that, and I was just misinterpreted, now it's like, I love to learn. I love, every day I'm listening, reading, talking, speaking to people, and it's a total guilty pleasure, and it's, so every interview I sort of, and it might simply be going, shame on me for having opinion. And it's really hard not to, you see somebody and you have an opinion, you think you know them, until I've had a number of, I actually, through the interviews, I love not knowing the people's backstory, because people go, oh, did you read my book or did you do something else? And it's going, no, I haven't. And I don't mean to be respectful, but I probably won't until I interview you, because when you tell me something and I literally, I can't help that I'm shocked or something else, it's like, because I'm sure I'm not the only person that doesn't know your story. The problem is, if I know you, then that will influence the interview. So I'd rather not know you and not know your background, and I've, like I said, I've had some massive sort of revelations through the interviews and even afterwards. And it's great, so it's, like I said, it is genuinely a guilty pleasure.
So, if anybody wants to listen to them, what's the link for them to be able to get onto the pod?
So it's on all the sort of standard platforms. So if you literally go into the podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Omnify, Spotify, etc. If you just search "Fire in the Belly," and you'll know it. It's a black and red logo. So you can read it there, and it's great. There's all show notes. So a lot of it have already been transcribed as well, and things like that. So different people love hearing different people's stories, and it's fascinating. I find it very inspiring, and it's that old thing, of anyone that's successful, you come away and you think, people have this illusion of sort of saying, I'd love to be like that person. And for me, last year I got the privilege of meeting Grant Cardone, and Grant Cardone is Mr. 10x. He's a very loud American for anyone that doesn't know him, but big into investing and personal development and everything else. But it's all big and go big or go home type stuff. And sitting in a sort of a private mastermind with him, and I sort of said to him, what's your fire in the belly, and what's how did you get to where you are today? His answers were quite revealing, but I mean, one thing I found most interesting was the fact that at 41 he was Mr. Normal, Mr. Nothing, nothing sort of extraordinary to see here. He's now 61. And we were joking and saying, do you think you're going to hit the £1 billion or $1 billion in terms of personal wealth? And he says, oh man, I don't know. He says, I'm at like 600 million right now, and I'm 61, I'm getting a bit tired and all this, and it's like, this man is debating whether or not he's going to have a personal wealth of $1 billion. And 20 years ago, he had a boring regular job and next to nothing. And you're kind of going, that's not magic or fairy dust. There's been a formula here, and that's what intrigues me.
And it is quite fascinating. You and I were at an event in Dublin in February, and the billionaire John Boyle was there. And it's just incredible to listen to them because one, they're generally so humble anyway.
Mm.
Well, what's a billion? It's just not, it's just money to me. But one of the things like I found when I asked him, um, how did you step up? How did you move yourself up to a different level? And he said to me, I went and partied. And I just imagined I already had it, and I went out and celebrated that I already had it. So it could all come back to the visualization. And that's something that you've touched on is visualization is just key to so much stuff.
It's absolutely key. I mean, I would be, we've like reading clubs, ironically. So 5:15 in the morning, we're sort of reading Think and Grow Rich, and there's a number of programs there, and sort of the Bob Proctor side, and there's a very successful local mentor here that I work with, and at any one time I'll have 4 or 5 mentors, um, and the whole thing, and I suppose even after losing my last business, I came away from that and I was sort of going, I have 3 young kids. I put some fierce hours into the business. My stress level was there. I actually have lost a tooth, and that was through stress.
Yeah.
Literally it was. Now, at the time, my youngest one was teething. And anyone that knows when kids are teething, it's a very painful time for them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it also means it's like the army. They scream at you in the middle of the night. So if you're already tired and cranky and having a bit of a bad day, and then to have someone who's screaming at you in the middle of the night, it really sort of, it was kind of a bit of a wake up call, but also it was a very stressful time. And I was just kind of going, this is nuts. I can't do any more, not without making myself sick. In fact, we just had the twins as well, so I was actually trying to retract, and I was going, I have to work less. And it's like going, but I've always learned that actually, if I want more, I have to work more, and then other people going, it's so easy, and you're going, right, were you a way off?
Yeah.
And like Grant Cardone and like all this, and things start happening, and eventually you go, how is it that people, there's Richard Branson, and he's 400 odd companies or something. It's a massive statistic, and he spends most of his day bloody kite surfing around his island.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, that man should be working 23.59 hours a day, and yet he's chilled, he's relaxed, and and he's sort of meeting people and all the rest. You're going, whoa, something's not adding up here. And that's the journey I've sort of been on, and saying, right, well, if, fire in the belly, I mean, you ask a successful person, what's your formula? And whenever they start coming back and they're talking about visualization, they're talking about goals, they're talking about, energy and abundance and universal power and all these things, eventually you can't sort of go, that man's off his head, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Eventually you got to listen, and you got to go, maybe there's something in this, and that's where my process has changed. Like I said, I've probably up until recently probably read about 1 book in the last 5 years. And then when I learned how I learn, which was, like I say, through the dyslexia and everything else, is like going, I'm you sit me down, read a book, I'm not really there. However, you put me in front of a video camera and you talk to me, well then suddenly it's I go into a flow state, and it just rhymes off. It's like, I don't even know what I said. I just said stuff, and it was genius. It was great. So then, like I say, Audible was massive for me, but listening to Audible books, like last year, had about 70 Audible books. But the key thing for me actually was listening to them at 1.5 or 2 times speed. At normal speed, I'm like, I'm bored. I'm like, oh god, that person's still talking, and what will I have for dinner? And yeah, God, I haven't shaved in a few days, and all that. I'm not gone. Speed it up and put it to 1.5 times speed. It's like, what did they just say? I missed something. Hold on, and I actually have to actively listen because it's coming at me much quicker. And so that actually was a really weird point. So you fly through the book because you're listening to it 1.5 or twice the speed, But everywhere I'm going now, if I'm like going in the car, I now love going in a car. If someone says, "Will you take me to the airport?" I say, "Yeah, cool. That's a long run. I like that one." Whereas before it was like, "Oh God, really?" Can you not get the bus or get a taxi or whatever? So yeah. So now it's like at nighttime, morning time, listening. Going through, and it is, the more you get into it, it's like an onion, and you're peeling back and peeling back, and um,
I
and
know, like,
ironically,
sorry, I was going to say, I know, like with my husband, he's dyslexic, and my
mm,
daughter is as well.
mm,
And my husband's from that era where, because he struggled to read in school, he's very good practically, but he wasn't allowed to do practical stuff at school.
mm,
And now he wants to do things, and YouTube is just absolutely fantastic for him because he can go and find anything he wants on it. Yeah, and I sort of think, oh, how much time do you spend on YouTube today? And then I come back and he says, well, I know I can change the engine this way, and I can put this into this, and I can do that. And people don't realize the other sorts of ways to actually learn. And like you saying,
mm,
you do stuff at 1.5 or 2 times faster with an audiobook. Not something I'd ever thought of.
mm. It's do you know, you have to be willing to listen, but it's never been, it's a bit like a lot of people go, I'm not going that course, I could learn more on the internet. And it's
Mm,
true, you absolutely can, and you should do. It's not a case of should I go on the course or should I go to the internet. It's like you should be doing both.
mm,
Now, any course and anything like that, and you'll know from the £2.73 club, it's like it's like information for free, implementation for fee. If you you need accountability, you need to be, with like-minded people, and actually you want to hear quicker or faster, or you want to hear a slightly different opinion on it, or somebody's experience of the information. Because the information is just words.
yeah.
But then someone goes, well, actually, this could be good or it could be bad, or it could be, YouTube's fantastic, but I mean, yeah, you also got to say, right, well, what are you doing with it? You know, who's saying it, because it's an unauthorized source as such.
Yeah.
Someone's opinion. You got to remember that it is someone's opinion. It's never been so easy to have an opinion,
True.
and yeah, and be incredibly loud. I mean, you could be on multiple platforms and shouting and screaming from the worktop, and from the rooftop, and go crazy, but it could be absolute nonsense. So, and a bit like I was saying with someone this morning, and it's like, you know, people are saying that they're reading and listening to all the news at the moment. It's like, I don't believe the mind is actually capable of handling all the news and information we have. A bit like, I mean, if you were to learn about every stock market and every trade and every property investment strategy and all this and everything else, and the problem is you more or less, you just go into paralysis, because you kind of go into so many permutations and so many things where actually I can only focus on one, and for everything else I get specialists, you know, and that's the beauty of the likes of the £2.73 club, is you get people, different experts and different people, and cross pollination between ideas and investors and things like that. Saying, right, well,
And
it's not my cup of,
it's
yeah,
that support group again that we were talking about when we
yeah,
talked about the property
totally.
network, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, people just say, "Oh, I don't have money to invest." And it's like, that's okay. Listen, if you wanted to be, and I was talking to someone last night, and I said, if you want to be an electrician, you've got to go and train for 4 years. If you want to be an investor, go train for 4 years. Become the YouTube's biggest #1 fan for 4 years, and then I guarantee you're going to be a hell of a lot smarter investor, and you're going to know a hell of a lot more than you would if you just sat there and going, well, I have no money anyway. So, if you've no money, then you've got plenty of time on your hands, and it's like, well, go crazy, you know.
Well, Pete, I think I could sit here and talk to you for another hour or so, actually, but unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the time for this. I really want to thank you. It's been really enlightening talking to you.
Thank
Anything
you.
you want to say to wind up before we go?
Just really, as you're saying before, listen, everyone's got fire in the belly. It's your choice what you do with it. I'd love to, for anyone that's out there would like to come on to Fire in the Belly or talk about it, please feel free to reach out to me through all the usual channels, the Facebooks and LinkedIn and Instagram and all the rest. And, something I sort of ask a lot of people is saying, do you respect yourself and do you love yourself? Or even like yourself? So they're simple questions to ask yourself. But when that's not happening, maybe it's time to just have a wee look back. So we're all capable of so much more. We all know it. We're all capable of more. And what are you doing about it? Karen, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Wide words. So I'd like to thank Pete for amazing information today. I will put the links to Fire in the Belly in the card at the end and also in the text at the bottom of the video. So Pete, thank you so much. It's been really great having you on here today. And I know we're going to be catching up, probably seeing each other again tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, do it all again. Super
Thanks
duper.
very much, Pete.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.